Hello, 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 and welcome to a brand new episode of Three Drams. As always, I am your host, Matt Healy, also known as Potstilled Matt, and welcome to my lovely whiskey abode. As always, I am here to go through a fantastic evening of Irish whiskies that have been dropped directly to your door if you are one of our fantastic subscribers to Three Drams. I'm always the person to tell you that this is the fantastic box you get every month dropped straight to your door. It has this lovely tasting card in it too with all of our whiskies that are on this evening. And then, of course, the most important part, the three lovely bottles we have here, which will give you a look into the world of Irish whiskey with the flavor makers and creators we have with us this evening. As always, I want to say a big hello to all the people that are joining us in the comment section. Martin Purcell, as always, a great fan of the show, was actually in the comment section telling us where he was from, where he's watching from, before we even went live. So, Martin, very good evening to you. I love the preparation. Gordon, Den and Glanmire, a very big hello to you. Grzegorz, welcome, my friend. I don't know where you're watching from, whether it be Poland or Ireland. I welcome you very much to the show. Marissa, great to have you. Of course, we always have our friends in the Walking Club in Shneem joining us. There is Aaron Riley just dropping in there as well. So, guys, whatever corner of the world you're watching from, I know lots of people watch back after the fact. We have our friends in Brazil who watch very religiously, and our friends, particularly Ayano in Japan. Very big hello to you in the morning time when you guys watch back. So it is great to see the Irish whiskey world being so international in today's world. So a very big thank you to you guys for joining us. If you're tasting along with us, do let us know in the comment section what you think of the whiskeys as we go along. There, of course, is the discount code going out at about 8:45. If you are subscribed to 3 Drams, you get the whiskey dropped direct to your door with either one, two, or all three bottles you're tasting this evening at a lovely discounted rate. So that is something you should be keeping your eyes out for. Grzegorz telling me he's in Dublin 22. Well, Grzegorz, I'm delighted to have you here. So welcome again. If you have any questions as we go along, guys, these are the flavor makers and creators we have in front of us. So this is your time to ask. These hopefully will be 3 new whiskeys for you, or you'll be returning lover of one, or if not all of them. I am delighted to be saying that some of these are going to be new to me, and I love tasting them with you guys on the live stream for the first time. So as we get going on, I am delighted to see that Gary is joining us in from California. We have a good spread of people across the island of Ireland this evening, guys. Of course, we have our German contingent joining us who never fail to bring a great enjoyment to the show. But listen, it's not me that puts this on. I'm just the pretty face that shows up and gets to talk whiskey with you guys. It's a very big thank you to the O'Donovan brothers behind Irish Malts, and of course 3 Drams as well, and to their team that make this all possible. They get all the whiskies together. They not only decant them, but organize all the whiskies months in advance and get them out to your door. So, guys, a very big thank you to them. But I know, listen, we're not here to listen to me rabbit on about them. We are here to talk about Dram Iver 1. That is a brand new, flatly Irish whiskey, the Dreamer. And we have brand ambassador Adam here joining with us. Good evening, Adam. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. How's yourself? Does anyone ever ask you that?
Actually, no, they don't. So I'm good, thank you. It's a nice evening here. I'm happy out. It's just walked the dogs. So hopefully they don't come barreling through the door while we're doing this. But appreciate you asking. As I said, this is flatly the Dreamer, which is Dram Iver 1. If you're tasting along at home, I'm just going to fill up my glass right now. But why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what this brand is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm, as mentioned, I'm the brand ambassador for Flatley Irish whiskey, and my job is essentially to get out into the public and raise as much brand awareness as possible. You know, we want to get people drinking our lovely whiskey. So liquid on lips, that's the name of the game. So we're relatively new ourselves. We only launched probably about 2 weeks ago. We've had a fair bit of media coverage, so I'm sure most people are aware. But obviously, we'll talk about it tonight for anyone who's not. But obviously, the name we're founded by Michael Flatley. So this is his whiskey. This was his idea. It was his initiative. It's his company. It's his dream. The first spirit that he ever tried was Irish whiskey. His parents are Irish as well, so he was raised very much submerged in Irish culture, and I think he's been as good an ambassador and a champion for Irish culture as probably anyone in the world. So he recruited Noel Sweeney, who I don't think really needs any introduction. I know you've had him on the show before, Matt, a Hall of Famer and all of that. But so Noel is actually how I got involved myself. And once I heard from Noel, I was quite confident then that Noel, I always liken it to if he's putting a whiskey together. I hope this isn't too niche a reference, but it's like Adrian Newey designing the Formula One car that you're about to drive. You know you're going to be fairly competitive in it. But I got to try it then for the first time, probably about 3 weeks ago, and that at that point I was really excited to get out and get sampling with the people, because I knew at that point I was quite confident people are going to like this whiskey.
Well, it's one of the things I always knew about Flatley in his lovely castle home, and is it Cork he has his home in, was he had a converted wine cellar into a whiskey room, and I remember that being him being heralded as one of the largest Irish whiskey collectors in the country long before he ever decided to launch this.
I've heard about it. I've not seen it, but yeah, I've definitely heard about it, and
there's time
this
yet.
Will be a nice. Yeah, I hope so. But this will be a nice addition to that collection. I'm sure this will probably be pride of place from. Sorry, I'm tapping. I've got the bottle here to my. For anyone who's not seen it, sorry, excuse my camera's not the best quality.
How about this? I'll pull up the picture of the bottle there so people can see it.
Even better. Yeah. So I think the label is quite striking. They definitely did a lovely job. For me, it's got that kind of look of an old world whiskey, which is something I really like.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about the blend that's inside and kind of how it came to be then?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose straight away the liquid is from Great Northern Distillery. So Michael was quite hands-on with the whiskey being put together. So he went up to Great Northern with Noel. Noel would obviously have that connection with John Teeling going back to Cooley days. And so he would have had a lot of kind of drafts, for lack of a better word, or and Michael and him would have been sampling them the whole time, kind of narrowing in on the exact one that they want. So Michael would have had the final say in that. And what we've come out with is a 5-year-old blend of grain and double distilled malts that has been matured in bourbon casks, and the malts aspect has been finished in PX and port casks. For there is the breakdown. Let's let me down there a bit.
Hang on, I've got a bottle here.
The breakdown is on the back of the bottle.
Might be a little bit clearer here.
Yeah, so absolute transparency.
There you go.
But yeah, it's 43% alcohol. So I think in time there will be more expressions. This isn't a once-off. I believe Noel is due to go to work on the next expression soon. But with this one, I think in time it will be kind of seen as our entry-level whiskey. And with the entry level, you kind of have to appeal to that broader demographic. It has to work in cocktails and stuff like that too. But it's quite versatile in the sense that, personally, I think it's lovely as it is, just neat.
So one question I've seen online is obviously with your transparency here. It's a triple cask whiskey with four entries on the whiskey types. I'm assuming the answer to this is because it's Pedro Jimenez, port, and then 2 bourbons. So triple cask being 3 different types of casks with four entries in the bottle.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, have a little sip.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I suppose the one thing I've not mentioned is the name of the whiskey. So it is called the Dreamer because, among many things, obviously the river dance and boxing as well. One of the things that Michael always dreamed about was owning a whiskey brand. And as he says himself, all great ideas in the world, they all start as dreams. So I think that's a good segue for this one is for the Dreamers. So Sláinte.
Sláinte. And of course, if you are sipping along at home, feel free to let us know in the comments section what it is you are tasting. But this is smooth. It's very malty as well up front.
Yeah, so I think, excuse me, double distilled malts. I mean, if you know Noel's history from Cooley Distillery, he knows how to work with it, and I'm told, well, from my history of where I've been before, I know grain whiskey is very malleable, really works with the casks, but I'm told that double distilled liquid is the same. So it's 5 years old, but there is a lot of life in that. A lot of yeah, life is probably the best word for it.
Absolutely. Alan's saying it's very smooth, very sweet, a lovely dram. I think that will be echoed by many you're tasting it this
Yeah,
evening.
I agree.
43% ABV, is it?
Yeah, 43. So as I mentioned, it just stands up that little bit more in a cocktail. The initial, I think, dossier is the word that went around for this. The initial idea that Michael had for the whiskey that he submitted to Noel was 3 words: smooth and delicious. And I think we can probably agree that it's absolutely that. And another factor was Michael wanted this one to be popular with women as well. So there is that kind of sweeter side to it as well.
Fantastic. So what is the rollout looking like for this whiskey? Where would people be finding it? Where are you launching it? What does the global takeover of Flatley look like?
Sure. So we've only launched in Ireland to begin with. We want to establish ourselves at home first. I think a good Irish whiskey should always establish itself at home. There will be plans then in place to head out west a little bit later in the summer, but at the moment you'll find it in SuperValu. Of course, you've got your independents as well, the likes of Celtic Whiskey, James Fox's as well, who, if anybody's around in Dublin tomorrow, I will be in James Fox's from 3 to 6 doing a sampling. If anybody wants to call in and try it again or ask any more questions.
Gordon saying he saw a bottle in the long hall last week, so clearly getting out there.
Yeah. We've had a lot of momentum. I have to say we've had some really great momentum. Even my first opportunity to really get out sampling this was at Whiskey Live, and we had plenty of footfall and even more dancers. There was plenty of dancers around, but we got a lot of interest and really good feedback as well. But we had Michael there on the Friday itself, so we were fairly busy both days. But as I said, we're getting really good feedback. Everybody that tries this liquid likes it, and I'm one of them. So I'm quite confident that I can get behind this myself.
Oh, fantastic! When you're not in James Fox's, where will people find you out in the world? Is your remit in Ireland, or are you European brand ambassador, or where will you be rolling?
Just for Ireland at the moment. So over the next couple of weeks, I'll really be looking to. It's mainly just been Leinster that I've been able to target at the moment, but I'm hoping to get out down south and out west, and we'll be up north as well. That we want this to be an all island whiskey. So I'll get a little bit of time to go up north at some point too.
And when it is going, I suppose across the island, does the name open the doors and bear weight? Are you leading with liquid first? How does that conversation go? Because obviously celebrity whiskeys have their ups and downs and reputations and whatnot.
I know, yeah, I know that. I saw plenty of it at Whiskey Live, and even kind of in the run up to Whiskey Live, that I think one of our best traits in Ireland is that we're naturally quite skeptical. Nothing wrong with that, but I think we have the perfect kind of combo here. That there's a lot of names that have been attracted to, or a lot of people have been attracted to the name Flatley, to Michael Flatley. So that's certainly drawn eyes to us. But then in the whiskey world, as soon as people saw the name Noel Sweeney attached to it, their interest was piqued by that. But so for me, it's somewhere in the middle of that. But what I would lead with myself is the liquid, because it can look as nice as it wants and it can have as nice a name as it wants as well. But it's all about what's in the bottle.
And what is the recommended retail price then, if you're looking to pick up a bottle of this?
You find it for about 45 quid.
Fantastic. And if people, as I said, you mentioned Super Value. Are there any are you in the carryouts or any of the e-commerce retailers? I know you'll be on Irish malts, of course.
Yeah, of course, we're on Irish malts, but just Super Value at the moment, and then independents to go with that, and any kind of the likes of the wine centre down in Kilkenny and places like that as well.
It's nice to see when you're talking about people on the show. You know, the large chains get mentioned quite a lot, but the wine centre in Kilkenny always seems to get a shout out in this show.
Yeah.
They're
They're a great shop. And
absolutely.
I've a couple of tastings lined up with them. I think I've one a month for the next 4 or 5 months. So anyone in the Kilkenny area, absolutely feel free to call in and have a dram and have a chat.
Absolutely. So if you were to leave us with your 30-second kind of elevator pitch, the things you want people to remember about this whiskey going away, obviously 43% is coming in for about €45, but as they're tasting it now and parting ways with yourself, what are the things you want people to remember about the whiskey?
Sure, that's a good question. But you know, there's probably a few. So I would say, firstly, Michael himself. You know, I've had a little bit of experience over the last couple of weeks now of people from outside of Ireland coming up to me and very kind of mesmerized by the fact that this is Michael Flatley that's involved in this whiskey, and they remember watching the Riverdance from 30 years ago. You know, I what's kind of taken me aback from that is kind of just how deep into the world that kind of phenomenon reached. You know, so as I mentioned, he's an absolute champion of or an ambassador for Irish culture, and for me, the organic next step for that is if you can encapsulate Irish culture into a bottle. For me, it's whiskey. You know, and then on the other side of that, we have Noel Sweeney, who he's a Hall of Famer. For anyone who hasn't tried his liquids, you probably have without realizing it, but I'm sure most people have. You know, the likes of Tyrconnell, Connemara. Obviously, most recently he would have been with Fercullen as well, Kilbeggan. So I think personally, I think we have the right recipe. We have a man who's deeply passionate about Ireland, and he will be deeply passionate about this brand of whiskey as well. And then I just can't mention Noel Sweeney's name enough.
Yeah, well, listen, whiskey Hall of Famers are hard to come by.
Absolutely.
And you've mentioned that a couple of times, and for anyone that is maybe new to the show or not familiar with Noel Sweeney, you're not just saying that as like a throwaway comment. He is literally a whiskey Hall of Famer for his years distilling. Yeah. And there's only, I think, 2 Hall of Famers from Ireland in there. So
as far as I know, Noel is the only Irishman in there for blending and distilling. So he's a master blender as well as a master distiller, and he's been making my life very easy for about 5 years now.
Well, absolutely fantastic. Well, Adam, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. That is, of course, Flatley's the Dreamer Irish Whiskey at €45 and 43% ABV. I really appreciate your time and introducing us to a lovely whiskey. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Well, not a problem at all. So this evening, we're going to jump around a little bit. We are going to start. We started with dram number 1. We usually go, obviously, the way numbers go, and we go to 2. But this evening, we're going to jump a little bit just to try something a little bit different. We're going to go to dram number 3, and this is Thomengate whiskey, which is in a Danish rye cask, a single pot still. So allow me to welcome founder of Thomengate whiskey, Mr. Nick Ryan. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks very much for having me on again.
Not a problem. It's always great. As I was saying off air, the HD quality of your camera is putting me to absolute shame. I need to know what camera that is when we get off air.
No problem.
Well, listen, it is fantastic to have you. So I am going to get dram number 3. As I said, we've jumped the order a little bit here. So we are going to pour this into the glass. And this is, I'm going to pull up the cover photo again. This
Yes.
is a word that is, I'm sure, I would mispronounce. So why don't you tell us the name of this whiskey?
Yeah, Hilmricker Saga. So many cities, in Ireland have a Viking heritage, and Limerick, Waterford, Dublin, Cork, had those Danish Viking roots, and something I was interested in. Obviously, history. I'm a big history buff, and hence part why I've revived the brand is the passion and interest of the legacy of what Limerick was in regards to spirit production, industrial era, but the first kind of where this came from was a collaboration with Waterford. We did their first inaugural bottling for their club and society, where we brought some casks over from Stownings, and I was lucky enough to be able to bring in not just one but two casks over. And the sister cask of the Waterford release was the first Hilmricker Saga, which was this wonderful Danish rye cask, which originally had plantation rum in it. So really, really unique. If you look at the carbon footprint of it, make the Green Party have a shiver up their spine. But it's recycled, so we can we can look at the positive side of that. But it's a fantastic and really unique whiskey in the fact that we have whiskey which is I guess a new world whiskey, as people would refer to it as. A Danish rye coming from Stownings, as I mentioned earlier. So this is the cask which we finished it in, and I was so happy with the initial release. I said, I got to make more of this, and it's a different rye than people are used to. We're used to American rye, which is produced typically in beer stills, as you know, these kind of short column stills and short number of rectifying plates, more robust and pronounced character spirit, where this is produced using floor malted rye and malted barley, which has been distilled using a Haga pot still, which has direct heat and worm coil condenser. So we have this wonderful Maillard reaction, but also the casks, which this was originally in, was a Barbados rum cask. So we got a little bit of that molasses character into it. All the whiskeys, pretty much apart from a few of the limited ones we've done, have been cask strength, and simply because my logic is it gives you options of what you can have in your glass tonight. So if you want to drink your whiskey at cask strength, you've got it there. If you want to bring it down to your palate, for instance, if you like to drink your whiskey at 46%, you put in about 2.5 teaspoons, which is 10 mil, 8 mil for a 49%, and 1 teaspoon for 55%. That's gives you options of how you can drink this whiskey according to your palate. And it's phenomenal because you can put, we've done this actually at Whiskey Live, where we've had same whiskeys in front of people, different ABVs and totally different experiences based on everybody's palate. So it's amazing. People are kind of going, oh, I'm sure that one's that and this is this. And it was just for a bit of fun. You can see people's, they're just complex that this is the same whiskey, but just different ABVs. It's just unbelievable. But this was a real passion for me to kind of bring to the market. And it's a really unique whiskey overall. So hopefully people will enjoy it tonight.
Absolutely. Well, what I'm going to do is, because I was going to ask you loads more questions, but I really want to taste it. So I'm going to say sláinte. I'm going to have a little sip here, and then I'm going to ask you lots of questions.
So this is pot still whiskey. So pot still naturally has a pot still spice, and then we've got a Danish rye. So we've got spice on spice. So, and what you really notice about this is that the lovely oil and mouthfeel, the texture, a really lovely waxy oil feel to the palate, and then it unravels. And as it unravels, you get the molasses character, the character of the Barbados rum underneath that. So you get the zestiness of the rye first, and that dissipates into this lovely molassesy character and tropical fruits. So it's really unique in that regard.
Mick, I taste a lot of whiskeys on a weekly basis, both for work and for potstilled.com and for myself. This is fucking fantastic. This is completely unlike any other whiskey I've tasted in a very long time. And it is so wonderfully unique. And I mean that in a really pleased and nice way. This is a very, very interesting whiskey. And I'm going to have a little second sip. But while I am having a second sip,
Yeah.
tell me how you got hooked up with Stouning. Because obviously, for people who don't know, in the world of whiskey, probably from more our end, Nick, Stouning are really cool, first of all, which is unusual. It's very difficult to be cool. And then they also had a part of the Diageo, I think it's an incubator program.
Still Ventures.
Still Ventures, thank you. So there's like the 20% or something was bought by Diageo to inject money for innovation. And they've like something like 32 little like 2,000 liter stills or something ridiculous.
It's awesome. Yeah.
So tell me how that came about.
Yeah, so I have to really thank Val, Martin, and Alan down below in Waterford for making that happen. Simply they knocked on the door, and a lot of goodwill and a lot of smiles and pleases, and luckily they obliged initially with the 2 casks, and we did sister casks, and then I knocked in again and said, hey, any chance I could get some more? This turned out fantastic, and we'd shared some of the whiskey with them, and they were really happy with what they tasted. They thought it was really cool and unique. So it was nice to be able to follow through with some more collaboration. They're happy for us to mention themselves. There's not many Danish whiskeys out there, but as you pointed out, Matt, they are doing some really cool stuff like floor malting, very labor intensive. They have a really unique setup for that. Kind of approach this kind of limited pot still size. In Ireland, I guess, the big players increase the size of their stills, and some of them have the world's largest pot stills in Ireland, where they've taken on this approach of what you'd see in cognac, where they have a limitation on the size of their pot stills. So kind of, the Haga pot still, the Portuguese pot still, an Limbic pot still, it's quite interesting. But I believe when they took over by Diageo, when they rebuilt the distillery, they brought in Abercrombie's from Scotland, and I believe they built the new stills. But they have that kind of DNA of the Haga pot still, which is just that direct heat, that worm coil condenser, getting some really unique character in there. So, we're stealing a little bit of their magic into the whiskey, to be honest. So, and I'm not ashamed to say that.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is very cool seeing how everything interacts like this. It's like pot still spice, rye spice, sweetness, all kind of kicking into each other. My only annoyance is I have no water beside me. I'd love to dilute it with my 10 mils on a teaspoon.
It's cool, because I guess, I think, Matt, we can both appreciate, and I think from chats we've had in the past, we're quite nerdy about things, and whiskey is quite a cool thing to play around with. And when you just see how you can have one bottle, but you can actually have 3 or 4 whiskeys, or pretty much infinite amount of whiskeys, just by playing with the ABV. If you have a bit of water, make sure good mineral water, demineralized water would be ideal. Being a Limerick man, I'd be definitely recommending some Ballygown or some Ishka, some good Limerick water. Pop it in there and bring it down slightly to your own palate accordingly. But I'm currently drinking at 55%, just like that kind of ABV. Just takes a little bit of, I guess it just tames it a bit, given that it has that full pot still spice, and then the spice of the rye. But it's a fun one. It's a real fun one altogether.
Absolutely. And I presume then that this is going to have a limited volume that goes on. What kind of run are we looking at? Excuse me.
Yeah, so we had 3 casks laid down together, kind of simultaneously, and we kind of released them when each one was respectively ready. So we currently have the first cask was HS001, which is the first iteration, the kind of, I guess, the roll of the dice. Well, let's see how this turns out. And it turned out amazing. And then turned out, going to make more of this. So HS002. And this one we're having is HS003. So HS004 will come down the road, probably for export, just based on the interest. You can buy this in Ireland. You can buy it in Irish malts, obviously. And you can in James Fox's Fine Wines, Celtic Whiskey Shop, and carry out some limited carryouts as well as in Belgium, so and Luxembourg. So there's what we're finding is when I was over there in Belgium early in the year. And, these are places where nobody has to be polite to you. Nobody needs to say, I love Irish whiskey, because they don't. Their palate is, they love Scotch. They're, interested in bourbons and things like this. Irish whiskey to them is a lot tamer in their mindset, because they're only familiar with the big brands that have been out there. And they taste something like this and they're going, you have just broken my preconceptions of Irish whiskey, and I want more. So that's a positive sign. And that's kind of flattery you want to get when people are saying that. And, this is just me, the company. It's not, anybody else in here involvement, the kids and the wife, those are the additional support. But this is what's all about. Yeah.
Can I ask you, I suppose that's an interesting point to make about the Belgians, because you and I will know, being on the road for a number of years, what it's like dealing with these retailers. And probably about 6 months ago, I was in the Netherlands, and there's a very famous whiskey website and store called Whiskey Base, do lots of ratings and things like that. And I was in there talking to them about Irish whiskey, and I was asking about the Irish whiskeys they had on the shelves, just because obviously the store is chock-a-block with Scotch, and then there's some really interesting bourbons and things like that. And they said, "Oh, I'll bring you to our Irish whiskey shelves." And I went, "Okay." And it was like one out of the whole store, which were all Scotch. There was like one shelf was Irish whiskey, and there was Teeling, and it was like Clonakilty, and there was a couple of other indies, and then there was loads of Jameson. But then somewhere else there was like 43 Waterfords, right?
Yeah.
And I said to them, I said, why aren't they on the Irish shelf? And they were like, "Well, those aren't Irish. Like, we know they come from Ireland, but they're not Irish." And it's funny because those retailers have such very strong opinions about the these they stock. I presume you've had some very positive and some very, I presume, comical interactions with retailers on the continent.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you do see that, and I think it's great to see that they have an interest and they're willing to try, is the main thing. And it's just that I think it also helps that they actually like rye. Particularly this one is a rye finish, so it does help that it kind of accommodates that palate. You look at the Northern Europe, and look across Scandinavia, Germany, rye is a big thing. So, and hence why rye was big in America, is because the German settlers, the Dutch settlers, they brought that rye cultivation over those areas. So it's natural that they would like rye, but there is more than just rye. It's a pot still whiskey here. And again, Matt, straight hand, firsthand, trying to explain the difference between pot still and single malt, and they're like, "But single malt is made in a pot still." No. So it's trying to get them across, and they're going, "Hey, you like your bread, you like whole grain bread, we make whole grain whiskey, so we have multi-grain, and it's better than the white loaf." So that's kind of the best way of putting it across.
Absolutely. I want to jump into some of these comments because we're blowing up here. Jager saying he's a lovely kick and he likes it, and then he also said legend, but I'm unsure if that was about the whiskey or he got excited about something. But Marissa saying really lovely, bit of spice box, but what a gorgeous nutty caraway seed and marzipan taste.
Wow.
Gordon jumping in twice, saying it's spicy, and he agrees with me being. This is back when I was fawning over my first sip. And then he goes on to say the finish goes on forever, and he loves it. Gavin saying it's very spicy and a lovely aftertaste. Roisin saying she's blown away by this dram, and Martin Purcell saying always an awesome dram. Well done, Nick.
Thank you.
Nick, for those sitting at home who are clearly enjoying themselves, and those who have a number of people watching right now, I'm sure, who aren't subscribed to 3 Drams and don't have the whiskey in front of them, or watching back after the fact in a similar sense, without the whiskeys in front of them. And of course, if you don't have the whiskeys in front of you, you're not subscribed to 3 Drams, you're not getting a discount code, guys. But for those who are looking at this at retail, what is the RRP at retail?
So it's cask strength, so it's 120 euros a bottle, and it comes as such like this. So this is a bottle. I got this all backwards now, so apologies.
Yeah.
So all individually waxed wax sealed. I know it's not your favorite wax seals, Matt, but it's tamper proof, so the kids can't get into the good stuff. So anyway, this is all the coins are individually laser engraved. All the bottles are individually numbered. They're certified as well. So this is, they're limited. There's a lot of labor, a lot of love goes into this. This is whiskey that is monitored and regularly sipped and checked to make sure that the finish is right, and it's only released when it's finished. It's 1 year and 9 months of a finish in this whiskey. So it's you can tell really that it wasn't released until it was absolutely right. Initially, we thought it would take 6 months, but just that, took a bit longer. The first cask we did was only around 6 months, less than 7 months around that. This just required that extra bit of time, but it really benefits from that additional attention and love, an extra bit of cost of storing it all. But they're a wonderful drop, and I think even it's so authentic. I did all the labels myself, so you can find some spelling mistakes at the back. So proofreading is always, if anyone wants to volunteer to proofread, I'm always looking for some second eyes. So, but yeah, it's a lovely drop, and as I said, available through Irish Malls, Fine Wines, Celtic Whiskey Shop, James Fox's, and carry out, as well as the folks over in Belgium and Luxembourg.
Well, absolutely fantastic. In the global conquest of Thomond Gate, are there other countries where you'll find more core expressions rather than just this lovely Danish rye cask?
Yeah, we have a core expression on the way, which is the Nightingale, which we will reveal more details about, but a wonderful drop. Got fantastic response from at Whiskey Live and the folks there. So, it's a really lovely drop. We have officially our own whiskey made from Limerick grain. Won't be released for a number of years. As I think I might have shared with you in the past, that we are growing our grain in Limerick, malting it, sending up the G&D, as well as we've grown oats in the past as well, doing our own mash bills, and using the fine folks at Great Northern Distillery to distill our new make and then laying them into casks of our choice. So we have officially our own whiskey, and some really fantastic drops that I've tasted from samples of it, but it's something that we're not going to rush to market. We're going to take our time. We're going to make sure it's going to blow your socks off when it comes out. But really exciting. Very challenging year this year with the way the weather has been, but we've got our barley in. It seems to be catching up. The weather's been favorable. But yeah, it's exciting times for the future, but we're opening markets. We've stock in America. We're going to be entering into different markets. Well, I'll share more detail on that while we open them up. But as you know, Matt, so think about Patrick next, but as you know, Matt, you can work with a lot of people, but you need to make sure you get the right importer for those markets, make sure that they can talk about your product, communicate what's the uniqueness about it, and make sure the right people are drinking at the other side.
Absolutely. Well, Nick, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This has been absolutely wonderful whiskey, and I think the comments section has absolutely lit up about it this evening. Of course, if you're in the comments section in 5 minutes time, you'll have a discount code if you were a subscriber to 3 Drams, and you can get both, all 3 of these whiskeys. We haven't had our last whiskey of the evening yet, but if either of these whiskeys have tickled your fancy, make sure you get those in there. Nick, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for introducing us to such a fantastic whiskey.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for everything. Best of luck, man.
Thank you very much. Well, that was an absolutely stellar whiskey. And now we are on to another whiskey that I have a very large graw for. We are being joined by Mr. Patrick Shelley, who is the founder of Curragh Irish Whiskey, among a number of other fantastic brands that you will recognize from the world of craft Irish spirits. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hi, Matt. How are you? Good to be on.
Well, I am doing well. I am delighted to have you. I know that you are currently in Poland, so you're joining us from the road. And for anyone wondering, he had all of those bottles in his bag to make that back spread behind you, which is spectacular. It's great to see you traveling with such an entourage. when abroad. I will say I have a bottle behind me here. Enjoy my shorts while you can. This is, of course, one of the earlier Carrick whiskies, but I keep this on hand always from trying this years ago. I stocked up because I love introducing people who come into my whiskey room. People always want to try something different, and a lot of people, particularly, have moved counties, have moved estates. People are coming into my whiskey room for the first time, and they tell me they don't want to drink anything like Jameson or Bushmills, and I'm like, listen, I've got you. And I always pull this out. So I've got a few bottles scrolled away still, but I'm now loving the fact that we have a chance to try this brand new expression. So why don't you give us a little bit of background about what it is you do? And I'm going to pour, this is dram number 2, guys, because I jumped the order around. So this is dram number 2.
Okay.
Why don't you tell us?
So, Matt, as you know, and luckily, I think you were one of the first people I met actually in the trade at one of the very early whiskey lives in Dublin.
Yeah.
And basically in 2015, I launched one of the first single malt vodkas in the world called Calac Single Malt Vodka. I was always kind of I'd been working in this spirits business for 15 years, but I'd always taken an inspiration from other things. And I really wanted to do something different with the previous range. I'm not going to talk too much about it tonight because we're talking about whiskey. But basically, I launched a single malt vodka, then a peated single malt vodka, and then Orna Brack, a single malt gin. I'd always said, and a lot of people have pulled me up on this in recent years, that Patrick, you said you were never going to do a whiskey. And I think the reason for that was I didn't have that inspiration or that passion to do it, because I felt the last thing the world needed is another sherry cask or something that wasn't actually going to fit with the rest of the portfolio in terms of that innovation. The second thing, which is almost more important, is my love for food. You know, I travel a lot. I love discovering new cultures, new foods, new recipes. And I came into the whiskey industry actually from that perspective. I was always fascinated how chefs can balance flavors, add ingredients to enhance the overall effect. And the story started years earlier when I was in Tokyo selling our single malt vodka. And I was in a bar in Shinjuku in the center of Tokyo. And I ordered an Irish single malt. I was between a couple of meetings. I had my phone out, decided to have a nice glass of whiskey. And the barman served me a plate of chips, like we would in Ireland. But in Japan, they were actually dried kombu chips. So seaweed chips. So I was drinking the single malt and snacking on these. And I was just really fascinated by that interaction of the umami-ness, the saltiness from the seaweed, and how it actually tended to balance the sweetness of single malt. So that really kind of started that passion in terms of where I wanted to take it. So very quickly, for those of you that don't know Carrick Single Malt Irish Whiskey, it's made from 100% Irish malted barley, triple distilled at our friends down in West Cork in Skibbereen. It's aged in ex-bourbon casks for 3 to 5 years. And that's kind of the classic part. I think where the magic starts is the second phase. We then source seaweed from County Clare, the west coast of Ireland. And this is all organic, it's sustainable, it's all hand harvested. And we devised a way, actually, Matt, of charring the cask, using the seaweed as a fuel source to infuse that umami-ness into the wood, which we then subsequently take out all the spent, burnt seaweed in the cask, and we fill it with our single malt whiskey. which we leave for 3 months. So the whiskey, the reason I just wanted to give you a little background on to lead it up to what we're drinking tonight. We use 2 types of seaweed. One is kombu. It's a brown seaweed. It's quite boisterous. It's quite rich. The second one, and this is the variation you're having this evening, it's a green seaweed. It's a wakame. That's much more delicate. It's vegetal. It's got a little bit of a punch and spiciness to it. It's also probably one of the rarest seaweeds you can actually harvest. It's called, within the seaweed world, the Rolls Royce of seaweed. It's difficult to harvest. The harvesting time is a lot shorter than other seaweeds. But what I love about the wakame is this earthiness. And every time I drink it, and I had just sipped it before I came on, it's almost this green tea undertone, this lovely earthy tea-like element to it. And again, coming back to my love for food and cooking, I found this was really, really fascinating. So up to now, just to fill you in, so we've had, I know Nick was talking about triple cask. This is also a triple cask because the first stage is the ex-bourbon. Then we char virgin American oak casks with the wakame seaweed, leave it for 3 months to finish. And then the final stage is why we're all here today. And again, this is another one of my passions, is craft beer. I personally, everybody has got their own tastes. I love a very, very hoppy, bitter craft beer. And I thought it would work really, really well with these earthy, spicy notes of the wakame whiskey. So what we're tasting this evening is the first single cask ever that we actually made exclusively for Ireland. All of our other single casks are mostly sold in Asia, but certain amount in Europe. This one is also the first time we actually targeted a beer company. And the one we targeted is the Western Herd microbrewery in County Clare.
So I say it's Clare connection in the seaweed, Clare connection in the brewery.
So I just love what these guys are doing. It reminds me a little bit about our approach, you know, fusing tradition and innovation and trying to push things forward all the time. They produce a particular beer that I love called Flora and Fauna. So where they actually harvest the, you know, ingredients from the burn. It's very big and bold. It's a double IPA. And it's actually packed with 10 different varieties of hops, which I love. So for those of you that know the Kura wakame, it's, I think, quite well balanced between that natural sweetness, the umami, that saltiness, and that spiciness coming. So I thought bringing some of this bitterness of the hops, and particularly this beer, into the whiskey would work potentially very well. I think, Nick, you probably agree that once you embark on casking something, you've no idea how it's going to turn out. And
I will confirm Nick is nodding.
Yeah, I have no idea how this is going to work. Luckily, we have a strike rate of about 9 out of 10 so far, but I'm not taking it for granted. So what we're drinking this evening is a single cask bottling, limited to 274 bottles, bottled at 56.7%, so cask strength. I think on the nose, you're getting this earthiness that's coming from that wakame, that vegetal earthiness. There's that light sweetness coming through as well. But for me, the magic really happens on the palate. It's quite briny. You've got lovely notes of kind of pineapple, but also pine coming through. Again, I can kind of still feel this green tea element, that kind of neutral earthiness coming at the end. And when I was talking to the guys at Western Herd, one of the ways they describe their beer is in the term dank, D-A-N-K. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. I wasn't. But there's, it's almost this weediness in both sense of the word, the vegetal, but also the smoking version. And I find that really, really interesting. It's almost this musty, earthy, light pungency coming from it. So I think the way it finishes, so it's up to you guys to see what you think, but I think it's got it's quite well balanced on the finish between the hoppiness coming through, the sweetness, that maritime umami, and again the earthiness.
I'm surprised how much of that beer influence comes through, even with the power of the seaweed influence as well. There's a lot of that hoppiness, and I will put my hands up. Usually, I don't like IPA cask whiskies, and I'm loving this. This is so interesting and so delicious. It's such an interesting amalgamation of the flavors that they're working so well. It's a single cask you mentioned. What is the recommended retail price on this?
I think it's about 117. It's available at Irish Malts, but also we're in Bradley's in Cork, the Wine Centre again in Kilkenny, Ardkeen, Worldwide Wines, Boxes in Dublin. So let's say a lot of the good kind of independents in Ireland. Just one point to mention as well, Matt, what we did with Western Herd is we did a cask exchange. So we seasoned our whiskey in their cask, which was seasoned with the Flora and Fauna beer. We then, after disgorging, we sent the cask back to them, and they produced a limited bottling of Flora and Fauna Corach Wakami version, bottled at 9.5%, which is an incredible beer. It's like mother's milk to me.
Well, there's a lot of Irish whiskey fans that are huge fans of Western Herd, so I don't think you'd be alone. Because Flora and Fauna, whenever it comes out, there's war trying to get those cans before they sell out. Yeah. So can you give us, I suppose, a little insight? You must have some unique learnings, both in the realm of charring casks and probably seaweed. Is there one fun tidbit or maybe mistake to avoid in both? You don't have to be picking your brain for everything, but is there one fun tidbit from both charring casks that you've learned through all this experience, and is there one tidbit from the world of seaweed?
In terms of charring, do you remember I was mentioning Japan and that taste experience? It was a big challenge to actually replicate it into something that is not even scalable, but doable from a whiskey perspective. So basically, I ordered a load of oak chips on Amazon. I ordered seaweed to be delivered. What I then did on the barbecue was I charred the oak chips with the seaweed, closed the barbecue lid, and kind of let it infuse. And then I put these oak chips into a classic bottle of Irish single malt, just to see if there was going to be a reaction. But I remember during it, I got a call, and this before I closed the lid, and I noticed that my tree was going up on flames, and it was also the neighbor's tree. So it was a question of grabbing buckets of water. So it didn't start out too well, The second thing
Before you jump into point two, just from memory, was that on your? Did you live in an apartment in Paris when you did that? It
Yes.
wasn't like
Yeah.
it wasn't like a backyard in County or
Yeah,
back garden
exactly.
in County Clare. You were on a balcony in Paris setting fire to trees.
Yeah, so it was quite a big deal at the time. Then the second thing I learned, and this is really fascinating from, again, everything we've done had never been done before. It's the first whiskey in the world ever to be influenced by seaweed. So the disadvantage is you've no kind of rule book that you can kind of stick to or follow. But I remember we were trying to figure out how long we leave it in the seaweed charred cask. And so we did a number of tests on casks. And I kind of felt it was going to be somewhere between 2 and 4 months. But I remember we left one cask for 6 months, and the guys in the warehouse pulled it out so I could taste it. And I said, "No, guys, that's not the cask." And they said, "Yes, it is." Now, what happened was really fascinating for me was that because we do a very light charring on the inside of the cask using the seaweed as a fuel source, it doesn't penetrate very deeply into the fibers of the wood. So that means that that flavor is limited from a time perspective of what it's giving into the whiskey. So what had actually happened there, Matt, was that all of this umami had been given into the seaweed or into the whiskey. And then when that stopped, because it was virgin American oak we were using, then all this caramel and vanilla started coming in. So the end effect was it completely reversed the first 3 months, which I thought was fascinating. So that's why we leave it for just 3 months now.
Very good, and that's right. And I presume you've tested the flip end of charring heavier to try to impact it more. I presume that changes the flavor of the umami, does it?
It does, but the way we do it actually is quite arduous, because it's not like we all know how a classic cask is charred, but what we do is we use 3 kilos of seaweed per cask, and we put it in 500-gram intervals. The cask is laid horizontally. We use a flame torch to get it burning. Another mistake we made was that initially our seaweed was too dry. So it was like almost a spontaneous combustion in the cask. It was burning like paper. So we decided to leave about 10-15% moisture in the seaweed so that it would smolder more. And all that kind of, helped us kind of crack the way we would go forward. So 500 grams per interval. We then close the cask, the flames go out, the smoke rises. We then turn the cask, open it, and repeat the same gesture until a full 360 has been kind of charred and smoked. So it actually takes close to 30 minutes per cask to do it, which I've seen casks being charred in 30 seconds,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So it is very much this kind of artisan way of charring.
Well, it's clearly getting results anyway. And so for the global domination picture, I know that this is a single cask, but for the wider portfolio of your spirits, where are the hotspot countries where people will be able to find it outside of e-commerce?
The interesting thing is that we've got 3 different product categories: vodka, gin, and whiskey. Sometimes North America is very strong for our vodka, particularly because we work with Starbucks there, that they're generating quite a large volume. I would say Europe and Asia for whiskey. We're just starting in the US at the moment, maybe not putting as much focus as we should, simply because we're seeing massive growth in Asia. And I think part of the reason there, Matt, is two elements of Carac really work in Asia. Number one, people revere single malt. Like, single malt is like considered the gold standard of whiskey.
Mhm.
And secondly, people understand seaweed and how seaweed, is very often part of the diet in Asia. So I think bringing these two elements together, we've done a lot of very interesting single casks. So we've done the wakame you've just tried, but in a sake cask. We've done the kombu in an umishu Japanese cask. So a lot of kind of more interesting stuff on the horizon. But I would say in most countries of Europe, you can find Karak and all over Asia. And then I think in about currently 7 states in the United States.
Well, fantastic. So this is the Wakame Western Herd single cask at 56.7% ABV, if memory serves me right.
It's 56.7, correct.
Perfect. And you said 117-ish retail.
Yes.
Perfect.
Just check that on Irish Malts. I hope I'm not wrong.
We will. And of course, about 10 minutes ago, anyone who is subscribed to 3 Drams has a discount code in their inbox, so be able to taste it if you order directly to your door. So please enjoy those discount codes. Patrick, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I love sitting down with Karak every time we do. It's been a while. And you were right, as you were telling your story earlier on, I did meet you at Whiskey Live in your very first year there, where you convinced me to try Calic, and I was blown away. And it was actually, I tell not a lie, it was my last drink of the night. It was as the things were winding up, and I sat there and had an absolutely fantastic time. And I had completely forgotten about that until you mentioned that. So thank you so much for all of the years of great stories and now great whiskies as well. To Nick and to Adam, a huge thank you as well. And of course to the guys at Irish Malt and 3 Drams putting this all together. To you guys watching at home, to you guys watching after the fact, a huge, very big thank you. And Patrick, I know you're in, I'm not sure what city you're in Poland, but I hope wherever it is, you have a lovely evening there this evening.
Thanks, Matt.
All right.